in this technical demonstration, we're going to bring multi-factor authentication into our console environment and our login environment. So in order to do this, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of my PuTTY sessions. We've established that we can log in using an Active Directory account, but we want to go through some added verification of the user. So we're going to do a couple of things. The first is make sure that we do have access to our portal, which is part of Privileged Access Service. Now, I've got Privileged Access Service and the Identity Portal installed within the infrastructure. It's not a cloud-based tenant, it's a customer managed or on-prem tenant. So we're going to go ahead and go to that portal. This is where all of the Centrify MFA or multi-factor authentication policies or profiles have been applied. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. I'm going to log in as Alex Foster, as you can see here, who is an administrator of Privileged Access Service. And in order for us to be able to apply multi-factor authentication at a console view perspective, we do need to apply a specific role to those computers. So first thing we need to do is create the role. So let's go down to Access and go to Roles. As you can see here, I do have a number of roles that are already in place, but these roles are applied to users. What we need to do is create a computer role. So I'm going to click Add Role, and we're going to call this one Computer Login Role. And we're going to go over to Members. Now under Members, I'm going to go ahead and add in computers. So I'm going to select the computer option in my search filter. We're going to go ahead and apply it to the app server, which is a Windows-based server. And we're going to add the help desk server. So now I have my members added to this role, but we do need to make sure we add that administrative right. So I'm going to click on administrative rights and I'm going to click add. And the right that we need to apply so that we can apply multi-factor authentication at the console level without using the portal is computer login and privilege elevation. So I'm going to select this option and I'm going to click add. And we'll go ahead and save it. Now, this is just the first step. The next thing we need to do is we need to take the IWA certificate from the connector and apply it through group policy to those systems. So in order to get the IWA certificate, it is also found here in the portal. So I'm going to scroll down under Settings, and I'm going to go to Network. And here is where my Centrify connectors are located. So you can see here, I only have one. It is the app server, fulfilling a dual role. When I go into the properties of the connector, I see an option for IWA service. Now, as you can see here, I can go ahead and I can download the host certificate, but that's not the one that I want. What I want is I want to use this blue link to download the IWA root CA certificate. So I'm going to go ahead and click that link, which will then allow me to save it. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I'm going to go ahead and put it under the downloads directory using the default name of IWA Trust Root. Go and click Save. Now that it's been saved, I can just simply click Cancel. Now at this point, we have to make one additional change, and that is within the policy. So I'm going to go over to Policies. It's found under the Access menu. And as you can see here, I only have one default policy. I've been using this throughout this training. If you have multiple policies, obviously whichever policy applies to your multi-factor authentication for the computers will have to apply in this particular instance. So since I'm only using the one, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the default policy. And I'm going to go to Authentication Policies. As you can see here, I have some options here: Centrify Services, Centrify Clients, and Centrify Server Suite Agents. And this is the one we're going to use. So I'm going to expand this, and as you can see here, I have Linux, Unix, and Windows servers. We're going to use this particular option. And I'm going to enable authentication policy controls. So I'm going to select yes, and as you can see here, I do have authentication rules that I can apply. Now, I don't care what the rules are. I just want to apply multi-factor authentication for those servers that apply. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the default profile if no conditions match. In this case, there are no conditions. So I'm going to simply select the Omicron MFA authentication profile that I created earlier. and I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Now at this point, I've completed all the tasks within the portal. So my MFA and my authentication profiles have been configured. I have a role now that's in place that associates to these particular systems. Let's now go ahead, and I'm just going to minimize the browser. I'm going to go back to Access Manager. Now what I'm going to do is, under my Unix zone, I'm going to expand my computers. As you can see here, I have all of my systems. And under the help desk system, I'm going to go ahead and create an MFA rule or role. And we're going to assign a role. And the first thing we need to do is assign the Unix login. So we'll go ahead and select the Unix login. And I'm going to add the appropriate account. Now in this case, I can apply it to a group. I'm going to go ahead and apply it to a user. I know this is not necessarily best practice, but we're going to focus on individual users at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and select Laura Bennett once again. And we'll go ahead and select her. And now she's got the Unix login role for the help desk. Let's do the same thing for a Windows server. So I'm going to come down to my Windows zone. I'm going to collapse the Unix zone for a second. Under the Windows zone, under my app server, I'm going to go to role assignments, and we're going to do the same thing. Now this is going to look a little bit different because we're not applying a Unix-based login. We're going to apply a Windows-based login. So we'll come over here to the Windows login, under the Windows zone, click OK. As you can see here, I have the ability to add all accounts or specific accounts. I'm going to add specific accounts, so we'll go ahead and click Add Account. And once again, I'll go with Laura Bennett. We'll go ahead and select her, click OK, and now she does have the login right for this server. Now the other option in regards to the role assignment is to apply the MFA, to require the MFA role. So I'm going to go ahead and assign a new role to Laura Bennett. This is going to be require MFA for login. I'll go and click OK. We're going to add Laura Bennett once again. And we'll click OK. So now we've forced the requirement of MFA for login. This can also be applied through the group policy by specifying Active Directory users or groups that require multi-factor authentication. So I can use this option, enable, and add Laura Bennett this way. So there's some flexibility that I have within the environment to require MFA. Now this just simply gives Laura Bennett the right to log into those servers, but we want to apply the MFA components. So this is where the group policy comes back into play, because the IWA certificate is going to be pushed to those systems. So let's go ahead and we'll open up group policy once again. We'll go back to the Centrified GPO. And we're going to go ahead and expand the policies under computer configuration, under Windows settings. We'll go to security settings at this point and then scroll down to public key policies. And what we're going to do is we're going to import the IWA certificate under the Trusted Root Certificate Authorities. So here's the Trusted Root Certificate Authorities. I'm going to go ahead and click Import. I'm going to click Next, and I'm going to go locate the IWA Trusted Certificate. We'll click Next. We'll place certificates in the following store. We'll go ahead and complete the import process and give this a quick refresh once I receive the message that it's been imported, which it has, and there's my certificate. So now what I'm going to do is I've launched PuTTY, and I'm going to try to log in as Laura Bennett to see if the MFA has been applied. So we'll go ahead and go through that process now. As you can see here, it does prompt me for my Active Directory password, and this is because this was a GPO that we applied earlier. And now, as you can see, we have further validation by having to answer a security question, which is part of the authentication profile found in Privileged Access Service. So we'll go ahead and answer the question. And now, as you can see, we were able to log in successfully as Laura Bennett. But we had to answer the security question as part of MFA in order to gain access. So now let's take a look at this from a Windows perspective. So now I've switched over to my app server and I'm simply going to log in as a different user. So I'll select other user and we're going to log in as Laura Bennett. And as you can see, the multi-factor authentication component has kicked back in. It's going to ask me to reprompt or re-enter my password because this was the first challenge within the MFA profile. So I'll simply add that back in. And as you can see here, I can choose other options if they are configured for me, but they're not at this point. It's just security questions. So now I need to supply the answer to that question. And now, as you can see, I can log in. So you can apply multi-factor authentication not just through the portal for password checkout or for secure remote login. You can also apply MFA directly at the console level if you're using an RDP client or a PuTTY, for example, as a secure remote login component. It is important to note that the IWA certificate, which ties back to privileged access service, must be deployed to those systems either through a manual process, third-party process, or GPO. And if not, it does not know, the system does not know to point back to the privileged access service to apply the MFA profile.